Hello, good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the VRX webinar, Tracking the Impact and ROI of XR in Enterprise. It gives me great pleasure to welcome our three panelists and our moderator for today's discussion. So welcome Raj Tiwari, who looks after immersive technologies at Johnson & Johnson, Vinay Narayan, who's Vice President Product and Operations for the Americas for HTC Vive, and Burrell, who's the Director of Business Development, Automotive, Engineering and Manufacturing at DHL. And Amy Peck, who is a great friend of VRX and moderates a lot of our discussions, both at our conferences and online, like now. So Amy is founder and CEO of EndeavorVR and does work across the board with a whole load of enterprise clients. So Amy, over to you.
Thanks so much, Pete, and thanks to everyone for joining us today. We have a spectacular panel, so I really would just like to dive right in. And if we could start maybe with each of you and just share a little bit more about, what your purview is respective to each of your companies and what you're working on, and then we'll dive right in. So Raj, why don't we start with you?
Very good. Amy and the team, Pete, thank you very much for having me here. This is Raj Tiwari, Johnson & Johnson service owner for XR. In the parallel, I also contribute my expertise with the Forbes Technical Council, work very closely with the MIT team and many other different platforms in the industry. Working last 23 years globally, driving XR and IEEE worldwide co-chair for Digital Reality Initiative, just to try to shape the XR, how it is going to be democratizing, and how we can make XR more sustainable, affordable, and accessible to all. So this is a little bit about myself, Amy. Thank you. Back to you.
Very good. And Vinay, can you share a little bit more about your role at HTC Vive?
Sure. Hey guys, my name is Vinay Narayan. So I lead product and kind of the overall customer engagement for Vive for the Americas. So a lot of what I do is not just help to kind of support our existing business in XR, but really work with our partners in terms of kind of platform integrators to really create an ecosystem and a platform that really allows a lot of these experiences that we're trying to build to actually have like scalable solutions. So so much of it is not just kind of a single use case, but we understand that AR and VR or XR overall is really going to be the interface for these future platforms. And so we want to make sure that we're continuing to drive that from a premium experience standpoint.
Excellent. And Lee?
Hello, everyone. Lee Burrell with DHL. As Peter mentioned, I serve as the project lead for our initiatives within DHL supply chain within North America. And my job is to really better understand and coach the organization internally as to what opportunities are out there within the market, who is really innovating and playing well with the logistics services that we offer, and what opportunities are really there for us to partner with companies to drive value in really three key areas: improving safety for our employees and our customers, improving our training ROI and time, and then finally innovation as we face customers.
Fantastic. So let's talk a little bit about really what the title is today and what do you see as the impact of XR in enterprise? And I think maybe I'd like to start with Lee and Raj and finish up with Vinay, since Vinay is working with sort of a broad swath of companies. So Lee, can you share a little bit about some specific projects you're working on and really what that impact is, not just for DHL, but what you see for enterprise in general?
Absolutely. So the reason, really, the way that VR came to our attention is that there's a war for labor. I'm sure everyone is experiencing that, both at frontline labor and certainly, white-collar type labor. We are, experiencing drastically low levels of unemployment. And when you're starting up operations that are 800, 1,200, 1,600 people, and you're teaching them how to operate fairly complex operations with RF guns, computers, they're interfacing with a lot of different pieces within our business. How do we get those people up to speed as quickly as possible. Today, we use PowerPoints. I'm sure everyone can remember back in high school and college how effective those were. So we're taking an employee who might not have English as a first language, who might have a GED only as their highest form of education, and we're sticking them in an environment where it might take them 2 to 3 weeks to become proficient. In the prototypes that we've run thus far, we're able to reduce that time around 20 to 30%. And I think it's really key for us to have our mindset wrapped around VR is just the tool, it's not the goal. And what do I mean by that? When I put a person in a VR environment, my goal is not for them necessarily to be trained faster. I mean, that is the goal, but the goal really is to be able to test them consistently, right? Think about it like this. I stick 20 people in a room, put up a PowerPoint presentation. Those 20 people might learn at different rates. They might have different experiences, different backgrounds, etc. And then it's very expensive to test those people. So I want to train them, and test so hopefully none of them fail, because I've wasted my money at that point. Whereas in VR, each experience can be tailored to that individual, and it's constant and consistent testing of that person. So once they show the skills that they are proficient at, they can then move on to the next section of the training. So if that person's able to complete their training in 3 or 4 days, I've now saved a week and a half of their time and our time to bring them out on the floor. In addition, I can bring the warehouse to that person. Historically, I have to have trainers and operators at the warehouse, so the person has to go to the warehouse and then train. Whereas in this environment, I can centralize all that activity, that personnel, the time, the resources into one, what we're calling a regional recruiting center. So that's extremely important for us. And then finally, on the innovation side, in my line of work, the more opportunities that I have for a customer to see our operations, it increases exponentially my opportunity to work for that customer, work with that customer. But what is everyone today? Extremely busy, right? So what if I can go into a customer environment and I say, hey, I operate a very similar facility in Bismarck, North Dakota. The odds of me getting that customer to Bismarck, North Dakota are incredibly slim. However, if I'm able to pull out a VR unit and put them in that environment in a real visceral way, that has an impact on that customer, an impact of which they will share within the internal organization. So those are really the areas that we're focused on in terms of VR, and that we're really exploring, okay, what is out there? How do we scale it up? That's a big key. And how do we tackle some of the challenges around what we're experiencing?
That's great, and we will definitely touch on some of those points you just mentioned a little bit later. So Raj at Johnson & Johnson, what are some of the solutions that you're looking at internally that are having the most impact? And again, if you can kind of then paint it with sort of a global viewpoint.
Definitely. Amy, before I jump in there, I just want to, for in benefit to our participants here, maybe some of those the participant may be hearing the XR first time. So just for the participant is the XR, which is the extended reality. It's a kind of the umbrella where the augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality, 360, 3D, all sits under the XR. So this the term recently coined in the industry. So just for benefit of for all everyone's understanding. Now coming to the overall, the XR, where it can be used. So Lee, a lot of great points you have already covered. So in general, like I'm talking about the life science industry, or in general, talking about, say, like the training is the business use case. Business simulation is going to be the key aspects of it. Wherever you need immersive or the interactive training, the XR is the answer for that. And as Lee did mention that literally we can bring the warehouse to the workers is a virtual tour. Having even like those are the facilities which are not built yet. Those can be replicated into the XR, and we can train our employees doing the virtual tour and the interactiveness. Another great business case is the design review. It could be sale like the product and faster go to market. So earlier, we used to have that the product build, prototype build. Now some of the companies are using the 3D for faster go to market, but the XR even have the way added advantage on top of all. Literally, you can build from the day one that the product or the business model or any kind of the infrastructure, and key participant can start reviewing. It's not only help the faster go to market, but it's a very iterative and very constructive feedback and the continuous feedback you can get with the XR. Productivity, which is the industry 4.0 all over the industry across the globe. They are struggling with how to make the industry more productive, how can be ready for the future. The XR is going to be the answer for that. So just for there are the three key pillars to not only survive but thrive in the market. Or the one is the adaptability, and second one is the agility. Third one is the creativity, right? So how you can adapt whatever the latest trend, because the market is so competitive. You name any industry, whether it's a automobile, whether it's a supply chain, whether it's a life science, any of those industries, so competitive, right? And things are changing the pace we have never experienced earlier. So all those three pillars, adaptability, which is like faster interaction with the immersiveness, the XR supports that. The agility, big time, because as Lee was talking about, everyone learns differently. So human learn differently, like the VARK, visual, auditorial, read, write, and the kinesthetic. That's the four ways the human can learn. And XR supports all of those pillars. So faster learning, and that helps the people to be ready for the future. So this is the, I would say, is not like the other technology which comes and goes. This is the XR is already in the mainstream for the many industry and enterprise wide. So this is the great tool, and a lot of the business use cases are unlimited. But I was just trying to highlight a couple of those, and some of those like the collaboration as well, safety, marketing, data visualization, all of those the great cases in the enterprise where the XR is used and has the more benefit and the greater ROI using XR.
Thanks, Raj. And so, Vinay, you and I have had numerous discussions over these same topics. And so Raj and Lee have brought up, great use cases, things we know work very well, things that we know increase productivity, and, as Lee mentioned, reduce kind of time for training exponentially. But what are the practical elements of really building economies of scale and for companies to really look at kind of building a 3D asset library and leveraging this technology across all of their business lines? Raj has brought up so many ways in which companies are using this technology, but how do they scale it?
Yeah, that's a great point, Amy. I think that's kind of one of the opportunities really that you have in the industry is the opportunity to scale. So I think the value props for XR in general, they're pretty clear. So I think when you kind of list it out, you realize there aren't really any other technology platforms or products out there that do training or design and collaboration better than AR and VR. So why doesn't it take hold overnight, right, essentially? And I mean, some of it, at the end of the day, it is just time. The other part, it is infrastructure. So a lot of what we do at HTC Vive, it is work with a lot of those infrastructure partners like Intel, NVIDIA, Unity, Unreal, et cetera. So I think it's very important that we continue to really address some of the pain points that enterprise has for the friction of adoption, which is integrating at the end of the day into workflow. Some of the things we also understand is whenever we're putting in technology into the workplace, especially at scale, we're competing with existing technology, existing hardware. So it has to be easier to implement, and it has to work with other things that are existing as well. So some of the stuff that we're trying to really work with as our partners is leveraging existing asset libraries. So a lot of companies do have existing 3D libraries. And there's some industries like the AEC, architecture, engineering, construction space, where almost all your assets are 3D. So where do you kind of really draw that value in, and how do you pull that into an existing workflow? One of the areas that we've tried to really kind of work with is just content distribution behind firewalls. While that may seem like a very simple problem, when you look at the existing content library, let's say, for example, on Steam, there's a lot of great experiences on Steam, but most of those can't be used across industries, right? And because they can't be your IT admins won't allow that to happen. So this past year, or past couple of years, really, and really aggressively this past year, for Viveport, for example, we've built these tools that allow that content to be deployed in an enterprise-wide environment. We've also worked with NVIDIA on with Holodeck, which allows cross-collaboration of high-res digital assets. So it's one thing to kind of be in a LAN type of connection and sharing digital files, especially high-resolution files. But if you kind of really think about it, doing that globally in a headset and rendering with low latency, these are real technology hurdles. So as we look at kind of some of the big things that we need to solve for, technology is still a big opportunity. While there's great headsets and other technology out there in the market, there's still more components that need to be addressed, and some of them are real physics problems. So we've worked a lot with Intel with hardware and software solutions, as well as with NVIDIA and AMD on hardware and software solutions, because integration is important. We've also worked on increasing partnerships that are complementary and cross-collaborative. I think one of the things that we need to make sure, especially as industry leaders, and Raj and Lee are definitely a part of that, is how do we create solutions that are not siloed and not so niche or only usable in particular environments. So partnerships are really critical there. And then also the ability to create content. We want to make sure that we're working to create content that's a lot easier to do so, but also at the same time, content that can be distributed at scale as well. So a lot of these are kind of the common themes that we're kind of working with. And because we know that one company cannot scale overnight or really have the broad impact, and that's why we try to work cross industry and try to be very open about it. And as we work with some of these major kind of Fortune 500, Fortune 100 partners, we're also keeping a really close eye of how we can distribute those tools, those learnings back out to the community, because we really do feel that the community is going to be the next aspect that has the ability to scale.
Yes, I agree. And I'd love to hear, again, kind of keeping on this theme of the practicality of scale, at each of your respective companies, Lee and Raj, what is is there reticence to, because, this is a capital intensive enterprise to scale out XR on a number of levels, but the benefits are clear. How are those conversations? How do you push those upstream and get buy-in and get budget for these projects to be greenlit? And Lee, why don't we start with you at DHL?
Sure, no problem. So very good points by all. I think for us, as we've gotten rolling with this, we've really had a dispersed adoption. So DHL is made up of four business units, if you will. So we have VR projects going on within our DHL global forwarding operations within Brazil. We have them in Europe, and we have them in APAC as well. Different projects that they're focused on. One is an office-based setting, another is a forklift-based safety tool, and another is productivity-based in Europe. I think from an adoptability standpoint, we have gotten prototypes approved, and we are seeing an ROI on those, both hard and soft ROI, and I can explain what those are in a minute. But really, what is preventing us from scaling up at this point in time, and one of the reasons that I wanted to join this call and put this out into the community, is how do we make VR, AR more simple to use? The people that I interact with, both customers and internal stakeholders, are not technology people. They're just not. We're warehouse people. So the problem that we have is that, yes, in a perfect world, in a perfect scenario, in a perfect room, and I have time to set everything up and walk everyone through it, it works fantastic. But I can't always be there. A capable person can't always understand that. So now we have the questions of, well, do we have to call IT? How much does that cost? And all those things become a problem. I keep asking the community and working with my partners is, how do we make this as simple to operate as a PlayStation? How can it be, hit a button, select the warehouse or the game or whatever it might be, and get it started that way? That's really the key and the thing that I'm working on the most. But in terms of VR and adoption, the best part about VR, in my opinion, is its visceral experience. That first time I can put someone in a VR head unit, it's like a light bulb goes off for them. And they go, why aren't we using this everywhere? And I go, well, let's talk about that. But that's really the key to adoptability, is a lot of people don't understand what VR means. They don't understand how it operates. They think they might get sick, putting the headset on and various things like that. But once you put them in that environment and you start getting their brain working on, okay, where are the applicable impacts to our business, it creates internal excitement. I don't really have to sell VR. It sells itself. All I have to do is set that person or that team up and really have them start exploring. So that's where I've had the most success, is just letting people experience it for themselves. It truly is a magical thing to see that face light up. I've had a few people in tears as taking them on a Google Earth tour and things like that. That's what's really helped prove and push adoption within DHL.
That's great. So I'm going to let, after we're done, have Vinay kind of talk about some of the things on the hardware side that they are doing to make life easier for the end user. But in the meantime, Raj, if you want to share a little bit about your experience about getting some of these projects moving forward at J&J.
Definitely am. So, I mean, like one of the key aspects is with the XR is, as we say, is like the seeing is believing. So because our business partners in general, overall the industry, as Lee did mention, is like the business are not the technical people, and they're not supposed to be. So first of all, whenever we are implementing or the scaling the XR into the organization, because this is seen initially like as any other technologies which can like that take their jobs away, right? And B is some of those, the users are not that digital savvy, which are the millennials like. So we have to look from the user perspective. A is not promoting this as another fancy technology, but this is really a game changer when it comes to enterprise. Industries are already seeing that the big ROI on it when it comes to making the business more predictable, improve the accuracy. One of the key challenge in the industry is like the safety. So those are the things are already out there. So looking from the user perspective is the key. Identifying and start with the simple, right? The baby step. The many a time when we go to the business partners, we talk about the multiple things, and that leads to the confusion, because there are the two category of the people, whether they know about the XR and other people, they don't believe that this is going to be helpful. So what we need to do is looking from the user perspective, identifying the ROI, clear message, and start with the simple, very simple XR POC or test and learn, I should say. In that way, the success is identify the simple, at the same time identify the one of the use cases which is going to be adding the most of the value, because many a time you just get the one chance to adopt. If the organization is losing the confidence, you're going to lose the chance for the second time. So look from the business perspective, talk the business language when you are implementing. And coming to the scalability, so this is as this industry is evolving, a couple of the key things, because we don't have like the standards out there in the market. Many of the vendors also claim that they can do these XR implementation. So identifying the right partner, right the hardware, right strategy, and with the modular approach is the key. So if we are doing our homework properly, the success goes very high. And a couple of the example, like when we are trying to, or we have the great partner, like we have the standards already within the organization, where the HTC is our one of the hardware standard across the globe now, because we want the standardization, we want the things with the higher quality. So having a great partner, having a great approach, simple start with the biggest ROI, those are the couple of the things we need to see when we are doing the scaling or doing the test and learn within the organization. And seeing is the believing. So
yeah, I think you really encapsulated a lot of those key elements. Standards is a big piece. Finding the right either platform and software development partners, hardware, and then having a modular approach. I agree that is the key to scaling. And Vive has been thinking about how to service enterprise on a number of levels, and answered enterprise needs with the release of Vive Pro, and now tetherless with Vive Focus that's out now, and I'm sure there's a further evolution. So Vinay, can you talk about what Vive's approach is in working with your enterprise partners and your platform partners, and what's coming next that you're able to share in terms of answering some of the issues of simplicity and ease of use?
Yeah, no, thanks. Actually, and I think a lot of what Raj said, I think is why like the Johnson & Johnson implementations globally are one of my favorites, is because some of the challenges that these guys have, especially at implementation at scale, and the success that they're having, are really doable, or you can implement that across different organizations, big and small. I think so many of these challenges with seeing is believing. Well, I totally agree with that. And if you're a leader in your organization and you're not really up to date between the different hardware platforms, I definitely challenge you to make sure you are. But we also recognize something very fundamental, that a lot of decisions are not made while you're in a headset. Well, yeah, design ones are and training ones are, but not to actually implement that technology. So I think it's very important that we continue to look at KPIs and metrics, especially if you look at XR as a tool. How does it compare to other tools? And that representation has to be measurable in a very 2D environment, right? Whether it's a PowerPoint presentation or a whiteboard or a board deck. And so we look at the ease of implementation as being one of those, especially as you look at competing technologies. So over the past couple of years, a few years really, we've kind of made incremental improvements. We try our best to really do a couple of things. One, make the changes that the industry wants, but at the same time, we don't want to fragment the industry. A lot of people kind of ask, can we have a lot of different variations of the headset? While many of these things are technically possible, by fragmenting the industry with all the different subset of categories, it makes global implementation really difficult. So one of the things that we try to make sure that we do is we try to, this past year, we launched the Vive Pro. And the Vive Pro, we said, is really about the prosumers and most importantly about the enterprise customer. And really, what does it make it that's really enterprise? The increase in resolution was critical. While that may seem like a kind of an incremental improvement, but that change allowed those in a headset to read text for the first time. And text is super critical because now you can actually create experiences in headset that are translatable to the real world versus what was happening a year ago, which was large text, or you're kind of adding additional layers of interaction because you couldn't read in a headset very easily. So that change was critical. But I think even when you're looking at that change as well, is we could have upped the resolution even more. But if we did that, we would have made all of your existing PCs and laptops obsolete overnight. And then you would have to go and buy new GPUs. And that would have stagnated your adoption there as well. So finding those balances of understanding that there's a need, but at the same time, there's a cost and friction point associated. So really reducing the friction points, but driving value is super important. But one of the things we've also looked at is there's been a big need and ask for going wireless. And so the wireless journey has been a long one, actually. And it's something that, there's other wireless solutions out there in the market, but they have issues with latency. They have issues with form or fit. They have heat issues. There's so many other things that keep you from going from POC to scale. And that's why we worked with Intel and DisplayLink over the past year and a half to really create a solution using Intel's WiGig technology that actually is really, really good. Extremely low latency, great form factor, great balance of the headset. And while we haven't started shipping them at scale yet, we just did pre-orders and starting to ship next week. It is something that, when implemented, is really a huge game changer. Because once it's set up, you don't have to deal with the cords, and you have a really kind of true immersive natural experience. But while we look at premium VR experience kind of being the platform for growth, and that's going to be an important thing when you're investing in all the different headsets that are out there. Sometimes you can invest in a VR headset, or you can invest in a VR platform. And what I mean by platform is not just the tools and services, but if you look at Vive, for example, whether you bought a Vive 2 years ago, whether you bought a Vive Pro, the ability to go wireless applies to both. And that's a platform mindset, making sure that those that have invested in the industry have the ability to stay premium and address their major pain points. We've also built other products like the Vive Tracker We said tracking, we've heard, as a very expensive solution to build. Very few companies can do that. So for a very affordable price, you now have the ability to track almost any object you can attach a tracker to. Since then, we've worked with tools with the major engine engine creators like Unity and Unreal to create tools that makes integration of trackers and other peripherals a lot easier. So those are some of the key innovations. But then we also, again, going back to the industry, what is the best plug-and-play solution? In Asia and certain other markets, we implemented our all-in-one solution with the Vive Focus. And I think while initially the Vive Focus kind of seemed like just like a headset, the Vive Focus is a lot deeper than that. While it is a headset that does not require a PC, that is very much plug-and-play with great trackability, a 3-dot controller, but it's also something even deeper than that. For the Focus headset, we also have the Vive Wave SDK. And the SDK is the only all-in-one platform that's available on the market. And what I mean by that is it's a software solution that allows other all-in-one manufacturers to actually use our software to power their headsets. And that's huge for developers because now you can actually build for one and have it distributed on multiple headsets. And right now, I think we have about 4 or 5 partners with 10 coming next year. So you're not locked into one platform. So if you need to use a Focus or a Pico headset or some other headset, you can actually deploy that at scale. That's been a really big component to that. But also, as part of the Vive Wave SDK, that SDK allows other experiences and other technology integrations to happen. So, for example, foveated rendering. Foveated rendering may or not be supported on Vive Focus, but why should a platform limit such a critical technology where some companies need foveated rendering? So that platform allows headsets that have that integrated to already have that built in. And developers with one tool can also build for evolving technologies. So companies can invest in the right levels of technology that's needed for them. And so those are some of the examples I think that we're looking at as we look at the growth and what we need to build. There's always a question of how can we make these things cheaper or more affordable? Is that really going to cause growth to happen? I think at the end of the day, what's important is for the tool to solve a problem. And really price points, even if you drop price points, you're still not going to have adoption. The price isn't necessarily the barrier for VR. I mean, time is one of them. It's still a brand new industry. I think when we're kind of tallying up all the firsts we've had in an industry, there's been like 10 firsts just with the Vive product this year. And when an industry is hitting the number of firsts at that level of pace, price is really not the challenge. It's really the value and reducing the friction point. So working with partners, working with the solutions we're building a portfolio or an ecosystem of products and services is really what Vive is really trying to do for the market and really kind of allowing the ecosystem to expand and platforms to be created.
And Vinay, so you mentioned a little bit earlier that integrating into the workflow, that can be challenging because, and I think everyone has mentioned that you're dealing with people like, for example, at DHL, they're warehouse people, they're not tech people. So at our company, we're sort of looking at the sort of top-down, bottom-up approach where what is when we get to the consumer, how can we engage the consumer? Because consumers are the workforce, right? Consumers are enterprise. These are, it's one and the same at a point. And so, where do you see that nexus where it becomes so, fluid with the end user, consumers, and AR, mobile AR, and that impact where it actually trickles down into the workflows for us, where it becomes so ubiquitous that it's not a friction point in the workforce? So maybe
I think
we can talk about that. Oh, Lee, did we lose you? I think we may have lost Lee for a moment. So Vinay, if you want to jump in.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I didn't realize you're teeing that up for the larger group. No, I think in general though, when we look at kind of when is kind of I think if I can rephrase your question properly, is at what point is kind of mass consumer ready for AR and VR, right? I mean, a couple of things there. I think in general that pace is slowly happening. LBE is a great example of that, right? So when you look at LBE, location-based entertainment, that is where more and more users for the first time are experiencing premium VR. And I say premium VR because that's a very important caveat, because Google Cardboard popular, mobile VR popular, but not something that convinces anyone to invest or use. But with premium VR, when you have that, you kind of have that head-turning experience. And LBE is a great example of that. And an amazing example of that is Dave & Buster's. This year, Dave & Buster's launched it at over 100 locations, VR experience, right? So it's a Vive experience, it's a Jurassic World experience. But they're doing tens of thousands of demos per week. And they actually have a solution in place working with a host of partners that allow that level of throughput to happen. And also they allow the onboarding. So if you've been at Dave & Buster's or any of these kind of location-based places at scale, they don't have much time for instruction. They don't have much time to get people in and out of headsets. So they need everything from a proper UI, from proper hygiene solutions, from an experience that quickly allows customers and partners to be able to monetize. So these are types of things that are happening and is starting to happen at scale. I think the greater question is, when is it going to be ubiquitous, really? And again, I think that is just incrementally going to happen over time. The automotive manufacturing industry is actually one of my favorites, because you're starting to see that industry take what they've done now 4 years ago using Vives, even the early dev kits of Vives, what they were using for design and collaboration, which drastically reducing their R&D time by years by using VR, but now using those same digital assets to not only train their workers on the assembly line, but actually bring it into the showrooms. And when you see VR used for a purpose, it changes things. And I think that's kind of, where you start to see the movement happen, very similar to kind of, the adoption of PCs, where you take something for use and then bringing it into home happen. And I do think, though, all-in-one headsets will allow the dealer showroom experience to also, you can experience that at home. So it's a combination of things, but I think it's just kind of that integration of enterprise experiences, pulling those experiences through the customer, and then eventually, when the time is right and the hardware portfolio is right, bringing that into home.
Great. And Lee, you mentioned earlier, if you're back with us, hard and soft.
Back. Sorry about that.
Good. Oh, good. No worries. Hard and soft ROI. I think that's a very important piece of this discussion. So I'd love for you to expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we talk about hard ROIs, specifically that relates to us within the warehousing environment in two ways: safety and training. So safety is obviously a very important part of our business and the warehouses that we operate on behalf of our customers. We operate with very heavy machinery, forklifts, piping, yards, various things like that. An injury could be disastrous. So if I have a person who I am training in an environment in which they are at risk, if I can remove that risk by putting them in a virtual world, that obviously has massive impacts in terms of they can't get hurt in a VR world, at least conceivably. So it could save us on insurance premiums, costs related to safety incidents, various things like that. I think training is the more focused approach that we're taking. As I mentioned earlier, some of our operations as e-commerce continues to grow, right? This is a huge opportunity as Amazon puts pressure on everyone. Customers that have never even thought about having an e-commerce strategy are now exploring that. So when I set up a warehouse of 1,600 people and I'm paying those people $15 to $18 per hour, if I can reduce the time it gets them training up to speed by 2 to 3 days, that's a sizable piece of business or money for us, up to millions of dollars. Again, that's money that I can reduce my cost of my service to go out into the market so I can win more business, but also decrease the customer's cost as well. From a soft ROI perspective, obviously I work in sales. So from a soft ROI, if I can, again, put that customer in their warehouse without ever having to build that warehouse, other than in a VR environment, I can provide a solution and have that customer viscerally experience that solution. Hey, here's how we set up this warehouse. Here's why we set it up this warehouse this way. Here's the flow of the product through the warehouse. Here's why we put your hospital section over here, because it increases the efficiency of the bulk storage section. Various things like that. Whereas my competition is sticking up a PowerPoint. There's a huge amount of, in a commoditized environment such as the one that I operate in, any type of advantage, certainly on a technology platform perspective, is massive. So you can't really say, can I say, oh, I won this piece of business because I had a VR and I was able to put this customer through it? I don't think I can put an actual dollar figure to that, but I think we can all agree in common sense that that would be an advantageous position to be in if I can have the customer better understand all the engineering, all the work, all the time and effort that went into creating their solution specifically for them. And that's what I mean when I say soft ROI versus hard ROI.
Yeah, and I think that's an important nuance. And Raj, how are you looking at, both measurable and again, this sort of soft ROI at Johnson & Johnson?
So Amy, if you can see that the overall the industry is revolving, one of the key area is a customer, right? All of the industry, they revolves around the customer, and the people doesn't remember, or the customer doesn't remember what they get out of you, but what the experience they got it. Of course, that the particular object is involved with that one. So coming to that piece of it, say within the organization and in the industry overall, is a couple of the key ROI is, the one thing is, like as you say, the picture says 1,000 words, but the XR says everything. Okay. Building on top of it is, there is a big gap across the industry is knowing and understanding. There is a huge difference, right? So say like knowing the data, everything is whatever we are talking about, the data, right? People can claim that they know about the data. The companies can say that like that they know about the supply chain, but how many people they understand that, right? So there is a huge difference, and that helps to improve the productivity when we are shift from our employees and the workforce from knowing to understanding. So say like the data is a most critical piece of it. So if we can, and XR is a key enabler, where in a virtual world you can literally virtually be present with the data, play with the data, that improves the understanding big time. Now that is a data piece of it. As Lee was talking about, another the key aspects of it is the safety, which the industry is facing, and we are not there yet, but we are working on it. The safety piece of it is muscles memory and the brain memory. There are the two things, right? So no matter how much we train our employees on a safety procedures, when the emergency comes, it is difficult to remember what was there in the manual on page number 23 or para number 3, what I was trained on. No, only the thing going to be, the human being will be remember with the muscles memory. And with the XR, with the virtual reality one, when our users keep on experiencing and doing the multiple time unlimited hands-on experience, that becomes the muscles memory. That's the huge shift, completely the paradigm shift. So XR is like, we are getting the big ROI, and when it comes to the measurement, if our customer is experiencing, I'm talking about the internal customers. When we talk about the customer, there are the two segments of it, right? When we are talking about the measuring the success. So internal customer, who are our business partner, if their experience is not about the what, it's about the how. So say like if we have introduced any of the complex procedure, those are very difficult to follow, but with the XR help, it is not what, it is the how you have introduced that. So success rates goes very high. So in terms of the measurability is the customer experience and the value to the customer, what the value we are bringing in with the higher quality and the faster. So those are the couple of the key aspects when we are talking about the measuring the success, and XR addresses all.
Great, and I'm going to put this out to all three of you, but Raj, I guess we'll start with you. If you're giving advice to other companies, maybe there's some listening today, how to, even if they have one sort of siloed project, or if they haven't deployed any XR, how would you recommend they get started? Where do they find resources? Where are the best places to go?
So very good question. And so this is one of the key aspects, as I was talking about earlier. Start with the simple. Start with the great partners, as I was talking about. Like we did a lot of great homework before jumping in there, identifying what could be the standards. If not the standard, at least the great partners who can help you, not only the vendor, it has to be the great vendor partner who is also coming with you in not in your journey, but in the RDC, which has the challenges and the opportunity at the same time. So a couple of the bullet points is the modular approach. As I say, it shouldn't be agnostic. It shouldn't be a product or the vendor agnostic, because it is an evolving industry. When the time comes, they should be able to switch or geared up based on the latest product. So just the one example that we have developed one of the application in some other product. Now when we are trying to bring in-house that product, because our standard is the Vive, now we are finding the great difficulty to move that into the Vive. So having the modular approach, which can be help you to go forward, great partners, start with the simple and add the more value. And the key aspects is look from the business angle, not from the technological front. That will help you to succeed and bring the value to your business and to the organization.
And Lee, yeah, from what would be your advice for really getting started for companies?
Sure. Well, I think first being on calls like this, industry roundtables, really understanding where different businesses are in their VR journey and understanding what is out there. What are other companies doing? What challenges are they having, so that your company doesn't make the same mistakes that my company has, right? Learn from our mistakes, right? I would agree. Starting with a simple project with a clear ROI and timeline is extremely important. Within VR, it can get unraveled very quickly because it's just one more thing to do. Add this, make it clearer, add text, do all that, and it can become just an unruly experience. Have a crystal clear goal, a crystal clear timeline and budget to achieve that. That's extremely important. For us, finding a partner that understands our business was extremely important. There are a lot of very talented engineers, designers, programmers out there, but for me to go to them without them having never seen a warehouse, not understanding the challenges that my employees have, and being trained through a PowerPoint presentation as an example, they have to see that. So the partners that we brought on, they sat through our training, and they could see how boring it was, right? And we tried to gamify it as much as possible. I think having that partner truly understand your challenges in a real way is extremely important. The other one that, there's two more, building out, really thinking at the beginning, even though it's a simple project, the work that we do now, how can it be leveraged in the future? As it was mentioned earlier, some of building out those assets is a really a capital intensive and time intensive project. So if you can connect with, hey, if we build this asset, we can use it in these three areas, it really cuts your future cost of development drastically. And then finally, what we found effective is co-investment. Somebody that's invested in our success and we're invested in their success, whether that's co-investment from a monetary standpoint, from an equity or ownership standpoint, various things like that has been really important to understand that, okay, if we just pop a big fat check in front of you, how invested are you in our business versus if we have co-investment, and really paint the picture for what this roadmap within VR could be. So those are the 4 or 5 things that have really worked for us, and through my experience, in this journey along VR that I hope other people can learn from.
Excellent advice. And Vinay, people probably don't know that you're working with a lot of enterprise, and they can reach out, and you can be an excellent resource. Can you talk a little bit about how you're working with companies and how you're helping them navigate this landscape?
Yeah, I think some of the ways that we do that quite a bit. And actually, really great advice from Lee and Raj on that, because we have worked not only with smaller companies, but really kind of hands-on through this journey, because we were also trying to figure a lot of the enterprise opportunity came about by just kind of listening to our customers and walking them through a lot of these setups. In fact, that's how I met Amy, through a lot of referrals from partners that, hey, like there are a few companies that get the business first. And I think that's the most important thing, finding partners that understand your business, because the technology is a tool. And I think that's something we just need to understand is, the AR, VR, XR, at the end of the day, isn't the end all be all. So companies that understand your business and understand how the platform is going to evolve and emerge, is very important. That fundamental. And some of the things that we try to encourage though is there's a very large AR and VR community, and when things are new, people are very helpful. And what I mean by that is, for example, if you wanted to create your own website or digital strategy, more importantly, if you went to a meetup, you wouldn't get the full 101 and how can you build everything from scratch, but you can get that from the AR and VR community. So kind of being involved in the community is also really important. And one of the ways that we've seen companies take advantage of that in a good way that benefits the community and themselves is actually sponsor hackathons. Hackathons are events that either last 1 day or 2 days where the community gets together and solves a particular problem. So it could be, how do I do X, Y, like for example, what's a great interface for people with disabilities for VR, right? Or AR for that matter. And we've seen companies propose that, and the cost is pretty minimal. Oftentimes there's already organizers that are already putting together these events. They just need a corporate sponsor to get food and create a problem for the groups to solve. And that's a really good one for you to understand the challenges of creating content, because you get a chance to see what's complex, where are they stumbling upon, but also at the end to see the POC, right? So it's a great way to get a kind of rapid POC, and at the same time, maybe from the community, see their perspective about addressing that challenge. And then from there, it's a lot easier step to kind of integrate that back into kind of your environment there as well. And also, I think when you're looking at implementing any of these solutions, it's important to just at the end of the day, whiteboard out the workflow. You're going to solve for very particular pain points. If you start off thinking it's going to solve for all, that's where scope creep happens quite a bit. Things become very big. Things have to change quite a bit. But I think it's just about really limiting kind of at what phase do you want to implement a particular AR or VR solution? How can you get the point across? And then getting the mindset to be able to fund that at scale or iterate that through kind of the different groups and departments. So those are some of the great ways that we've seen things work consistently, in addition to kind of what's been said earlier there as well. And then also, if you're a company, oftentimes we want to go to AR and VR conventions or meetups. I think this enterprise-focused AR and VR conversation is rare, and it's a great one where you can get industry and you can get technology together. But oftentimes, going to a kind of a non-focused VR, AR kind of meetup or an event doesn't really kind of get you to the solution that you need. So oftentimes still industry events where you have partners that show up that can do immersive technologies, but also understand your business problem is also a great way to start to find some of those partners there as well.
So we have time for a quick lightning round, and would love to hear from each of you, what is exciting that you see in the future in the next, 2 to 4 or 5 years that's really exciting you about this technology. And we'll just go right down the line to wrap up. And Raj, how do we start with you?
Definitely, Amy, thank you very much. So the VR XR is going to be in the mainstream, and many industry, as I mentioned, is already in the mainstream. It is going to be like a smartphone, right? If you don't have the smartphone, then like the XR is going to be like pretty much like that. So as the opportunities are unlimited, this is going to be in the mainstream, and I see the multiple growth in the industry, whereas adding the value, the big time ROI to the enterprise. Another key aspects is like, this is the technology which is, whenever we are talking about the new technology introduction, the employees are feared, oh my God, the job is going to go away. No, this is kind of the technology which is going to be helping industries and employees to be ready for the future, the workforce for the future, which is the one, and will help them to be more productive and stay up to date for their career and to their job. So, and building to whoever want to learn more about the XR, like reach out to the conferences, as Vinay did mention, those are the greater places.
Great. And Vinay, what about you? What are some of the exciting things you see in the next few years?
Yeah, I think some of the most exciting things I see in the next few years, one, I think Raj hit the nail on the head. We're going to see this platform being transformative. In the past, technology has shrunk certain job markets and expanded others, right? But always kind of favoring the highly skilled. So we're going to see the first time that actually changing, where skill sets can be increased without having to change your existing workforce, which is great for employers because you already know the person, you already know their loyalty. There's so many things you already know, they don't have to swap out. But I think what we're also going to see is as technologies, more and more technologies are coming online. So on the surface, things are becoming more complex. But this is the interface where you can really reduce the cognitive load, right? So this is going to be, imagine AR with AI integrated. When I say AI, I mean the ability to kind of filter and give you information that's relevant to you. That's going to be highly impactful. I also see other technologies being integrated like blockchain, which is really many things right now. But as you look at 3 years down the road, what the iteration of that's going to be. So you see this platform kind of being really as ubiquitous as kind of the internet in that it is hosting many different things. And definitely a few years down the road, you're going to see just headsets kind of being a lot more affordable, a lot smaller. And so those types of things you're going to see happen there as well. Even this past week, Mozilla with their WebVR integrations, you're finally seeing kind of tools that allow more of that level of communication. So we're going to see more and more expansion of that. And you're also going to see kind of tools and experiences that go across platforms. So I think there's a lot of stuff that's happening, but at the end of the day, when you look at what AR and VR are, they're going to be the intersection or the interface for the future technologies.
Love it. And Lee, how about you? What excites you about what's coming down the pike?
Yeah, so much is exciting. I kind of feel like if you remember back in the 80s when Verizon came out with their first mobile phone, it was the size of a brick, and the guys in the car, I saw the commercial the other day, it kind of feels like we're at that moment, And if I can look at, the iPhone XS just came out and has the fastest graphics and the biggest battery and all this stuff, and it's amazing, right? So I think if I look at where we could be in terms of that paradigm shift and things like that, I can see us within my industry, warehousing and logistics, having more efficient operations. Better satisfied employees, right? My employee can walk down the line, and instead of them having to make a decision that could be wrong, and that customer opens their box and it's the wrong product, or I have to spend a lot of money to audit that pick, it's going to light up green for them, right? In their goggles, light up green, and they can go pick it. And if you've ever been to a fitness camp like Orange Theory or something like that, instead of the management team in the office seeing the labor as the data comes in, that's live feed. So hey, Steve, you're number 4 on your pick accuracy or your pick speed, something like that, to try to encourage employees. I see better interaction with robots. We're bringing tons of robots into our warehousing environment. So to keep our employees safer, if those robots can speak to that AR, VR type unit, to let them know in proximity of where they are to each other, to keep everyone safer. I think data capture will be incredibly important. If it's able to capture where mistakes happen, we can make changes within our process earlier on so they don't have to become a problem when they do. Faster decision making, I think, will be key. If I'm able to make decisions faster for my customer's business or use big data to leverage some of that decision making process, I think that's going to be extremely valuable. And finally, for us, a better customer experience. Again, if I mentioned earlier, if I'm able to put a customer viscerally in the environment of which their building will be and their operations will take place, I think that is just incredibly powerful for our business. So a lot of exciting stuff happening. Again, I think we're on the forefront. I appreciate you inviting me to this and allowing me to speak. I hope it was of some value, and I look forward to connecting with a lot of you as well and helping DHL continue its VR journey.
Fantastic insights from all of you. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you, those of you in the audience who are listening to us live, and hopefully those recorded later. Come and join us. Come and meet us at VRX 2018 in San Francisco. We will all be there. And Pete Karkeek, I'm going to send it back to you. And thank you again for having us today.
No, thank you. I think that was a really great discussion, expertly moderated as always, Amy. And thank you for that, and thank you, Raj, Vinay, and Lee for taking the time out. I thought there was some really great insight on there. As Amy just mentioned, and as Lee said earlier, it's interesting where different companies are on the XR journey at the moment, and the VRX 2018 event, as always, is set up to bring businesses of all types, both on the entertainment side and on the broader kind of industry side, together to really try and understand the opportunities and the challenges and help overcome them. So it'd be great to see those of you in the audience there. As Amy mentioned, all the panelists here and herself will be speaking at the event, and there's a code at the bottom of the slide you can see on your screen that'll get you $100 off your ticket. Early bird rates still apply, so it's $100 extra off. So feel free to use that. We will send recordings out from this to follow, so look out for an email from me in the next day or two. Lovely. Thanks very much. Take care. Bye.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks, Amy, for having us here.
Thanks, guys.